the other big news today is definitely Jaylen Brown of the Celtics. Averaged 26.6 points last season, 6.9 rebounds, 3.5 assists.
Are you looking at the stats trying to justify the biggest max contract in NBA history?
Because I'll explain. 49.1% field goal percentage. Again, when it comes to average points, 9th in the league. Rebounds, 39th in the league. Assists, 71st in the league. And these numbers are just straight up ridiculous.
No, but he's a dog. He's a dog.
No, he's got that dog in him.
He's got that dog in him, right? So, again, intangibles.
But some argue he's not even the best player in the team, let alone a guy that should have the biggest max contract in the NBA.
$304 million, 5-year extension, richest in NBA history. Plus, factor in those numbers you heard yesterday with Mbappe, $1.1 billion at the end of the day. What, he was getting $700 million
for a year.
For a year, which I'm hearing as of today he's not interested in.
No.
How could you not be interested in
I
that
told
offer?
You. Yesterday, the Kelly Clarkson theory. Who's Kelly Clarkson?
Yeah, but you just completely dismiss it.
No, the Kelly Clarkson theory is she's a small-town girl.
Living in her lonely world?
No. She's a small-town girl that became an international superstar that has a talk show. She won American Idol. She's under the feeling of, if I make 5, 10, 20, 30 million, what more could I need, right? You don't really need more than that. I actually heard Michael Vick in an interview talking about how he got involved in all that terrible dogfighting stuff. He said there comes a point, you buy all the cars and everything you want, you still have money left over when you're making that type of money. So maybe Mbappe is like, dude, he probably makes hundreds of millions of dollars through endorsements and everything. So he's like, I don't need it.
You say Kelly Clarkson, I'll say Lionel Messi. He said, yeah, I don't need that. I'll play in Miami. It's not about the money for me.
Okay.
So we've seen that before, but that's an absurd amount for a short amount of time. Like you said, he could make a big difference with that money for France or for wherever he wants to make it for.
That's true. But
so he's saying he's not interested, but think about the money we're hearing in the past few days. And actually, before we even do that, let's put this Jaylen Brown thing in perspective.
Well, that's what I wanted to do. Spot, if there's a way, is there like an inflation calculator app or something that you could just look up? Because I was trying to decide, is it me? Because I feel like these NBA contracts are getting so out of control that I know Larry Bird played a long, long time ago, but I was looking up Larry Bird's biggest contracts. And at the time, him and Magic and Jordan, those guys were breaking records as far as the biggest contracts ever in the NBA back then.
What year?
Larry Bird became the first player to earn $5 million in 1991 by signing a deal that gave him $7 million. So Larry Bird made $7 million in 1991, 92.
That would be $11 million by today's standards.
So we could talk about inflation. It's like when your parents bought their house for $80,000 and now it's worth $800,000. A house in the valley here that was Ramos? I'm not from here. The houses that are all $1 million plus. What were they? A couple $100,000 in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, most definitely 100 to 200,000 somewhere in there. Yeah.
So I mean, inflation with these contracts is absurd. To think Larry Bird.
It's absurd, but it makes sense. When sandwiches are $35 at the airport, it kind of makes sense. These guys have to make that kind of money.
Remember when Subway
going up.
Remember when Subway had $5 footlongs and CC Sabathia was doing the commercials?
I do.
I went to Subway recently. I got a 6-inch turkey sandwich and it was $13.
That's stupid.
So
right?
I mean, the cookies are $5.
I know. Cookies should be 3 for $1.
They changed the lyrics. It's $23 foot long.
Did you guys see Jaylen Brown's breakdown of what it is every year?
Oh, he danced when he was... Oh,
no. Of what it is every year that he's going to get?
No, let's hear it.
Okay, so in 2024, the first year that this kicks in, $52 million.
Damn.
Then the next year, $56 million. Then in 2026, 2027, $60 million. Then in 2027, 2028, $64 million.
Damn.
Then in 2028, 2029, $69 million.
What?
By the way, keep that number in mind, though, Fox Sports Radio Nation. His first year, you said $52 million, okay? It's a great number to start with, so keep that in mind. But let's look at the highest total valued contracts in the NBA right now, okay? And just see how this inflation is just going through the roof. Karl Anthony Towns, $234 million, $234.6 million. Devin Booker, $234.6 million. Bradley Beal, $251 million.
Big numbers.
The Joker, $276.1 million, and Brown at $304 million. Again, the highest to date. So, you think about those numbers, and then other comparable numbers that make you say, what?
Well, I
like
get it.
LeBron James' career earnings, that came out today. You know, people were comparing all these numbers. $531 million. That's for his career. Curry makes $52 million a year. Jaylen Brown will be making $52 million a year. Mbappe offered $1.1 billion.
I mean, that's a
to
little
play
different because it's like
year.
foreign oil money,
I
but
mean,
still,
I get it,
these
but this
numbers
is still
are
professional sports, right?
Yeah. You know what? You said it recently, Covino. You said it because it was the truth with Yankees that were winning World Series in the olden days. Back in the day, these guys were like AC maintenance guys, and like they had like side businesses in the off season
They own
because
car washes and tailor shops in the off season.
guys
Like
that
in
were
the off season, Yogi Berra would fit you for a
suit.
necktie. Yeah, no, seriously, that's true because they had to have side gigs just to get by.
So while regular folks, I'm not trying to make everyone feel bad, but regular people have seen everything go up around them. The only thing that went down in price are TVs. Besides that, everything else has gone up.
But you got to buy a
exponentially.
warranty on them
Yeah.
because they don't last the way they used to.
So it's like the only thing that's gone
Well,
down
you know
in
why,
price.
too? I hate to be a stickler for it, but all you're buying is really a screen nowadays. That's also the reason why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're buying a
A
screen.
monitor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're buying a 70-inch monitor that you're putting all your apps on anyway.
But it's true, yeah.
But the point is, everyone else, if you were making $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, whatever you were making, you're sort of pedaling along, getting maybe a little raise here and there. And society just keeps getting more and more expensive. Your taxes, mortgage rates just went up. Everything's expensive. The only thing that's matching the inflation in the world are sports contracts. It's true. Do you know anyone
ridiculous.
else?
To think that Steph Curry, one of the top players in the league, is making the same amount as Jaylen Brown per year. That's pretty wild. And I know he got that dog in him, but that dog in him, is that worth what Curry makes a year? I mean, props to him. Not trying to take anything away from the dude. All the power to him. But I just got to say this before we continue to speculate on Jaylen Brown and all this money. When you hear all this money being thrown around, in my opinion, even though it's a completely different sport, it just gives Shohei Ohtani more bargaining power. If people are going to say he's the next Babe Ruth, his stats are equivalent or better to Babe Ruth, and he's this two-way player that no one's ever seen, and he's the best in the game, how could you justify giving this guy the same amount of money per year as a pretty good player in the NBA? That's wild.
I know
to me.
it's cross sports, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense. When a guy like
generational player that we're talking about.
Max, when a guy like Max Scherzer or Verlander, I know they're 1-year quick deals and the Mets spent money, but when some of these proven pitchers are getting 40-something mil a year, what is Shohei Ohtani expecting? Because when you see what NBA players are getting, what soccer players are getting internationally, and baseball's revenue is as good as ever.
Hey,
Don't
by
let
the
anyone
way,
fool you.
he's
Baseball's
an
not fading.
International superstar playing on both sides of the ball. Internationally, the best, once-in-a-lifetime guy. And you're going to give him less than what Jaylen Brown makes a year? If I was Ohtani, I'd be like, yeah, okay, picture that.
You know what it just proves? And it just proves how huge sports are. And players are starting to just get a bigger cut of the bigger picture, right? Because when you say, well, what does the NBA make a year? If they're making billions of dollars, same with baseball, football, the players just seem to be getting more of the fair cut. They're still getting a little piece of the bigger pie. These owners who all bought teams for millions of dollars are now all billionaires. They own billion-dollar franchises. It just shows the power of sports. Here on Fox Sports Radio, sports is an industry that, while the world continues to lag behind inflation, sports are keeping up, man. Sports are keeping up.
Again, if you just joined us, we're Covino and Rich, just going over this and giving props to Jaylen Brown. Hey, he made it happen. 6'6", 223 pounds. Very rich young man. $304 million 5-year extension.
As they say, go get your bag, man. Go get that money.
Yo, he's getting his flowers, as they say, as the kiddies are saying. But if that's the deal, and he's making $52 million his first year, $69 million at the end of his contract, even though it's a different sport, Ohtani has to look at this and say to himself, well, if I'm a generational, once-in-a-lifetime Babe Ruthian type of guy, no one's saying Jaylen Brown's a Jordan-esque type of dude. No one's saying he's Dr. J by any means. And look at the money he's making. Now, because it's two different sports, do you feel that doesn't carry any weight, Danny G? Ramos, what are your thoughts on that? Ohtani's a special, special player. $50 million? That's not even what these... Again, these are assumptions. People are saying Ohtani will probably get between $50 and $60 million a year.
It's going to affect what direction you point your future son in, Covino. Same for me. Because imagine being an NFL running back waking up today. Saquon Barkley had to fight to get maybe up to $12 million in incentives.
Yeah, $11 million, right?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
with incentives, maybe 12 for a one-year deal.
Can you imagine him looking at that deal
and
Jaylen Brown just got?
And
Like,
the amount of distress they put their body through and everything else. So yeah, absolutely, that's wild when you really think about
When you factor in everything Danny G just said.
Danny G. Yeah, when you put yourself in their cleats, you're like, wait a second.
Man, those are probably like sad cleats.
Yeah, $11 million.
And
Take a beating next year.
Think about it. Sad to make $11 million.
Right.
Imagine being sad to make $11 million.
Right,
But
right.
because you're thinking, wow, like other sports and other big stars are making $30, $40, $50 million a year. It's insane. Now, Ramos, am I correct by saying Steve Garvey is one of your dudes? Why do I feel like he is, like back in the day? Was he or
Yes, one of my favorite Dodgers was Fernando Valenzuela and Steve Garvey.
not? Well, let me tell you. Spock, get your inflation calculator out right now.
Oh, boy.
here we go.
Steve Garvey. How about 1978?
Okay. Dodgers go to the World Series
45 years ago. Garvey World Series, right?
Yep.
Oh, that was his most handsome year too.
Oh, man, he was a stud.
Yeah, he was like a Ken doll in a Dodgers uniform.
Yeah, I think maybe he got paid in like, you know some people get stock options? Maybe he just got booty options.
He did a TV campaign for that Cologne Canoe that year.
Oh yeah, Canoe, and he was probably doing some sort of like Tidy Whitey's ad or something
So
with Jim Palmer.
Steve Garvey was making $340,000 in 1978.
1.5 million. All right, 1.6 million.
1.6 million
A year.
Inflation in sports is
ridiculous.
absurd.
It's absurd.
Am I right by saying, I feel like I saw this somewhere, was it Dave Winfield? Who was the first? Oh, wait.
Winfield, I remember
He was one of the first guys to get a million,
to break
right?
the million mark. I remember being a little kid, and that news came on the TV, and my grandmother said, and I quote, "This country's gone to hell in a handbasket."
They're giving this guy $1 million to play baseball.
Oh, remember,
God
he-
rest your
he was
grandma,
being
Danny G.
touted by
She would
all-
lose her mind today.
Oh my God!
Okay, so that kind of factors into the conversation we're having, even though we're talking different sports, right? He was potentially going to be drafted in football, basketball, and baseball. Baseball stepping up with the most money. So, I mean, it's kind of fair to say, well, look, I know Ohtani's not playing basketball, but he's a once-in-a-lifetime guy. He's got to look at these numbers the same way Saquon Barkley's looking at these numbers, the way other professional athletes are looking at these numbers saying, well, then what's my value? With this inflation, with this Jaylen Brown contract, with this Mbappe thing, again, it's Saudi money, but still.
All right, I have a question. If you're an older athlete that had a Hall of Fame level career, or you were a World Series winner, because I know like there's like I love him, but like a grumpy dude like Keith Hernandez that probably rolls his eyes at every big contract because he was an MVP, won a World Series with the Cardinals, with the Mets. What was that guy making? Like a couple $1 million a year? I think like $3 million. He must be hating when like a middle reliever makes more than he did in his prime. I know
Well,
it's years later.
It's years later, and it's different in sports because you would feel the same way. Every Manny, Mo, and Jack, every pep boy out there listening, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, every fella listening to Fox Sports Radio would feel the same sort of agita if you knew what your colleagues make. But the thing is, most of us don't know that.
Yeah.
In sports, you know that.
You know, once at SiriusXM, someone printed something to the wrong printer.
Oh, boy.
And it was a like list of salaries of certain people, and it got a little passed around for a second. It's like, what?
Yeah, if you knew, you would be like, he makes what?
And then there's other times where you're like, oh, they only make that? Wait, they make that? So I think it's best not to know these things.
Yeah.
However, back to the whole point.
Because
Ohtani,
that's why Hernandez and all these other dudes are like, oh my goodness.
Ohtani's probably licking his chops, even though it's different sports. Like, wow, big numbers are being thrown around. it's a weird analogy, but the same way an old athlete must be like, really? That's what they make now? I always felt that way about, people that were held back for years, whether it's a minority or someone in the gay community or someone that, imagine if you're like an old gay guy right now. Your whole life, you were probably hiding it or people were terrible to you.
And now you're celebrating.
And now you're like 90 and you're like, look at the world now.
I know.
Like you're happy for the new younger generation, but you're like, I went through a life, those guys are probably thinking, I went through that. Think about, anyone in a minority group of anything.
Yeah, but I guess take the minority group. I'm talking athletes now.
Yeah. I'm just
They
saying,
still were
it's a weak analogy,
They
but
were
it's
still getting paid nicely for what they were doing back then. But the inflation is so evident when it comes to buying a sandwich, but extremely evident when you see these contracts. When Jaylen Brown is the highest paid player in the NBA right now, again, the richest contract in NBA history, $304 million 5-year extension. You're like, well, what is the next guy getting?
Yeah.
What is the next superstar getting?
Well, Danny,
That's a superstar contract. Is he necessarily a superstar player, Danny G? He's on the brink of that, but would you say he's superstar?
I would say he's like teetering
top,
on.
is he like a top?
So what is the next
top
twenty?
superstar?
I would,
top
I would
10 to
say
20
top
player?
10. He's around the 10th
10
best
to
Remember,
player.
he's the highest contract until the next one, right?
Yeah, you
this
and
sets
Danny,
the bar.
we pointed that out during the football season. Who's the richest quarterback? Whose ever deal is up?
Yeah.
Because it's just
Whoever's
really
next.
like who's
Yep.
next, right? I mean, like Lamar Jackson. All right, well, who's next?
I just saw
Who's next?
I saw Avery Johnson say last night. Just think when Jokic's contract or extension comes up,
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's like he's going to take triple, double that. So
And again,
biggest-
he's making 200. He has his contract's 276.1 million.
Covino, the biggest one, and we can move on from this other stuff to get to, but
No, it's interesting.
do
to me,
we
man.
do we all agree that the one contract that stuck out in our recent life, in the last decade or so, when A-Rod signed that 10-year $250, that seemed
Like mind-boggling.
like
Yeah.
what? Like we've hit a limit. 250, 10 years? A-Rod, holy crap. Like that was the moment. And to look back at that and be like, well, that's what like a guy like Brandon Nimmo gets. Like that's what like a guy that hits 280 with 15 home runs gets now.
It's insane,
Yeah.
dude.
So,
where
hey,
does it go? Where does it stop?
I don't know. Well, all it just tells you, make your kids athletes. Give your kids steroids. I'm kidding. Give your kids every opportunity to play in the big leagues,
Flintstones vitamins.
and you could retire early.
Make sure you take your Flintstone vitamins with steroids.
Marry
vitamins.
a woman with tall men in her family. Genetically test whoever you date to make sure you breed properly. Jeez. All right. Well, hey, Covino and Rich on Fox Sports Radio. Good luck to everyone.
And good luck to Jaylen Brown. Props.
Yeah.
Continued
Hey.
success, buddy.
Don't hate. Appreciate.
You're setting the bar.